an original story created exclusively for Golden Romance Empire. Christine's fingers trembled as she stared at the contract illuminated by her desk lamp. The only light left in the towering office building on Christmas Eve. The clause seemed to pulse on the page. If genuine romantic feelings develop between parties, this agreement terminates immediately with permanent reassignment. Ethan Reed, Billionaire CEO, her boss of 3 years, the man whose coffee order she knew by heart, but whose smile she'd seen only twice, stood behind her, his reflection fractured in the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking a snow-blanketed Manhattan. His voice, usually commanding boardrooms and crushing competitors, now held something unfamiliar as he whispered. "Just 4 days pretending to be my wife, and your aunt keeps her home." The check amount matched her debt to the penny. How long had he known about her desperation? Christine signed her name with a steady hand that belied the chaos in her chest, not understanding yet that the true danger wasn't in pretending to love this man, but in the moment. She would have to stop. Christine Matthews rubbed her tired eyes. The glow of her computer screen, the only illumination in the vast, empty office floor. Outside, Manhattan sparkled with Christmas lights, families rushing home with last-minute gifts, while she sat alone at her desk, finalizing reports that could have waited until after the holiday. But waiting wasn't an option when you were the executive assistant to Ethan Reed, the notoriously demanding CEO of Reed Enterprises. 3 years of working for him had taught her that deadlines didn't recognize holidays. And neither did he. She glanced at the clock. 9:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Her Aunt Martha had already called twice, voice heavy with disappointment, that Christine wouldn't make it home until tomorrow afternoon. The guilt gnawed at her. But what choice did she have? The bank's foreclosure notice on her aunt's small house had been clear. Pay by January 1st or lose the only real home Christine had ever known. The sudden ping of the elevator made her jump. Security had assured her she was the only one left in the building besides them. Christine straightened, smoothing her rumpled blouse as the elevator doors slid open. Ethan Reed stepped out, his tall frame silhouetted against the dimly lit hallway. Even after a 14-hour day, his charcoal suit remained unwrinkled, his posture perfect. The man was a study in control. "Sir, I thought you'd left hours ago." Christine stood, instantly professional despite the late hour. "Sit, Matthews." He approached her desk with measured steps. "I need something from you." Christine sank back into her chair, noting the unusual tension in his jaw, the slight dishevelment of his usually perfect dark hair. Something was wrong. In 3 years, she'd never seen him look uncertain. "My family is expecting me at the estate tomorrow," he said, his voice clipped. "For Christmas." "Yes, sir. I arranged your car service for 9 a.m. She'd also chosen gifts for his entire family, as she did every year. Gifts he never saw until he was handing them out. "I need you to come with me." Christine blinked. "I'm sorry." Ethan's hands slipped into his pockets, a rare gesture of discomfort. "My mother has been insistent about my personal life. She believes I work too much. The board agrees. They think I need stability to inspire confidence in our investors. I don't understand what this has to do with." I told them I got married. The silence that followed felt physical. Christine stared at him, certain she'd misheard. 6 months ago," he continued, his eyes fixed on the city lights beyond the window. "A quiet ceremony, private, just the two of us. You lied to your family." The concept seemed impossible. Ethan Reed didn't lie. He simply refused to answer questions he didn't like. A strategic misrepresentation. He turned to face her fully. "I need you to accompany me to the estate for 4 days and pretend to be my wife." The absurdity of it made her laugh before she could stop herself. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious, Matthews. You know that." His expression confirmed it. This wasn't a joke. "Why me?" she managed. "You know my schedule, my preferences, my business. You're competent, professional, and," he paused, "convincing when necessary. I've seen you handle difficult clients. Your family isn't a difficult client, Mr. Reed. They're your family. Which makes them infinitely more complicated." Something vulnerable flickered across his face. "I'm offering compensation, of course. I don't need." $127,400. Christine froze. The exact amount needed to save her aunt's house, down to the dollar. How did he know? That's very specific. I'm aware of your situation. His tone softened marginally. Your aunt raised you after your parents died. She's facing foreclosure. The bank won't extend further. Heat rushed to Christine's face. You looked into my personal finances. I look into everything that affects my company's efficiency. Your distraction these past weeks has been noticeable. She should have been furious at the invasion of privacy. Instead, all she felt was the crushing weight of possibility. With one word, she could save the only person who had ever truly loved her. 4 days, he said. Then everything returns to normal. Christine thought of her aunt's weathered hands, of the home, filled with memories of the only family she had left. She thought of her empty apartment waiting for her tonight, and the mountain of debt that kept her awake. When do we leave? She finally asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. Ethan's shoulders relaxed infinitesimally. Tonight. Pack for 4 days. I'll have a car waiting downstairs in an hour. As he turned to leave, Christine called after him. Mr. Reed. He paused. What happens if your family doesn't believe us? The ghost of a smile touched his lips. Then we'll both have to be very convincing, won't we? An hour later, Christine stood in Ethan's penthouse office, 62 floors above the city. The space was immaculate, all glass, steel, and minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her entire education. Nothing personal adorned the walls or desk. No photographs, no mementos. Just power, distilled into architecture. Before we proceed, there are terms to establish. Ethan's fingers moved across his tablet, and the wall-sized screen illuminated with a document, a contract to protect us both. Of course there would be a contract. The man probably had legal agreements with his houseplants. You want me to sign a contract, to pretend to be your wife? Christine approached the screen, scanning the dense legal text. It's straightforward. You perform the role of Christine Reed, my wife of 6 months, from December 24th to December 28th. You'll receive the agreed-upon sum upon completion. She continued reading, pausing at section 4.3. Exclusivity clause. You'll have access to privileged family information. This ensures discretion. Christine nodded, understanding the need for privacy. She continued scanning until her eyes caught on section 7.1, and her breath hitched. If either party develops genuine romantic attachment or feelings during the course of this arrangement, she read aloud, this contract terminates immediately. The second party will be transferred to the Reed Enterprises branch in Seattle, effective within 48 hours. She turned to face him. Exile, really? Ethan's expression remained impassive. It's a precautionary measure. Emotional entanglement would complicate our professional relationship. You think I'm going to fall in love with you after 4 days of pretending? The absurdity of it almost made her laugh. I think clarity prevents misunderstanding. His voice was cool, detached. Is this going to be a problem? Christine thought of the foreclosure notice, of her aunt's voice breaking on the phone. No, it won't be a problem. Ethan handed her a stylus. She signed her name on the tablet, feeling the weight of the decision settle over her. The moment the contract processed, her bank account pinged with a notification. The full amount, already transferred. I've arranged everything else, Ethan said, moving to a garment rack she hadn't noticed before. Appropriate clothing, jewelry, essentials. Christine approached the rack, touching the sleeve of a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Designer labels she'd only seen in magazines hung in neat rows. You had these made for me. When? I've employed you for 3 years. Your measurements were in your health insurance records. Another invasion of privacy that should have angered her. But the urgency of the situation pushed the feeling aside. This is too much, she murmured, fingering the silk of an evening gown. My family expects a certain appearance. These will help maintain our story. He opened a small velvet box, revealing a platinum wedding band and a diamond engagement ring that caught the light like a small star. These are necessary for authenticity. Christine stared at the rings. This was really happening. Our backstory, she asked, slipping the rings onto her finger. They fit perfectly, of course. We've been secretly dating for a year. Married 6 months ago in a private ceremony in the Maldives. Only my personal assistant knew, ironically, the truth. You're a former art student who now works in graphic design. Why art? You sketch during lunch breaks. I've seen your work. He said it matter-of-factly, but something about knowing he'd noticed made her chest tighten. And why do we keep it secret? Privacy, my family's scrutiny, the board's potential reaction. All plausible reasons. Christine nodded, absorbing the details of her temporary identity. And how did we meet? For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed his face. I thought you could create that part. You understand narrative better than I do. The admission of her superior skill in anything surprised her. I'll think of something. Ethan checked his watch. The car is waiting. My driver will take us upstate. As they descended in the private elevator, Christine caught their reflection in the mirrored walls. The powerful CEO and his assistant, now playing husband and wife. The rings felt heavy on her finger, the contract heavier on her conscience. Remember, Ethan said as the elevator doors opened to the garage, for the next 4 days, you're Christine Reed, my wife. The words hung between them as they stepped into the waiting car, crossing the threshold between reality and performance. The Reed family estate materialized through the falling snow, like something from another century, a sprawling stone mansion with glowing windows and towering pines, draped in white lights. Christine's breath caught at the sight of it. You grew up here? She whispered as their car approached the circular driveway. Until boarding school at 12. Ethan's voice betrayed nothing, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped his phone. A uniformed man opened Christine's door, greeting her with practiced deference. Mrs. Reed, welcome to Evergreen Estate, Mrs. Reed. The title sent a jolt through her as she stepped onto the snow-dusted pavement. Ethan appeared beside her, his hand finding the small of her back with surprising naturalness. Ready? He murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Before she could answer, the massive front door swung open. A slender woman with Ethan's sharp cheekbones and steel-gray hair stood framed in the doorway, her scrutiny immediate and thorough. Mother. Ethan guided Christine forward. May I present my wife, Christine? Eleanor Reed's smile didn't reach her eyes as she extended manicured fingers. The mysterious bride. How interesting that my son kept you hidden for so long. Christine matched the woman's grip, firm and confident, despite her racing heart. A pleasure to finally meet you, Mrs. Reed. Ethan speaks so highly of his family. Does he? Eleanor's eyebrow arched. How uncharacteristic. The grand foyer opened into a great room where a Christmas tree stretched toward a vaulted ceiling, adorned with ornaments that looked museum-worthy. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, large enough to stand in. The prodigal son returns, with a wife no less. A man who could only be Ethan's brother approached, champagne in hand. Where Ethan was all controlled precision, this man moved with loose confidence. James, the fun brother. The irresponsible brother, corrected a woman descending the staircase, her resemblance to Eleanor unmistakable. Vanessa Reed Chamberlain. And you must be the woman who somehow convinced my brother to look up from his spreadsheets. Before Christine could respond, a deep voice called from across the room. Let the girl breathe, for God's sake. William Reed, patriarch of the family, approached with measured steps. His handshake was the only genuine greeting she'd received. Welcome to the family, Christine. Forgive the interrogation. We've been waiting 6 months to meet you. Dinner was served in a dining room that could have hosted state functions. Christine sat beside Ethan, hyper-aware of every move, every glance between them. So, Eleanor began, cutting her venison with surgical precision. How exactly did you meet my son? Christine felt Ethan tense beside her. This was the gap in their story, the part he'd left for her to create. Actually, she said, smiling softly, I spilled coffee on him. Ethan turned to her, genuine surprise in his eyes. It was raining, she continued, the story forming as she spoke. I was rushing to a job interview, not looking where I was going. I crashed right into him outside his building, ruined his shirt completely. And he didn't fire you on the spot, James laughed. Oh, he tried. Christine's laugh came naturally. But I offered to pay for dry cleaning, and somehow that turned into coffee the next day, the real kind in cups. She felt Ethan's hand find hers under the table. A silent thank you for the believable narrative. You never told us that story, Ethan, Vanessa observed. Some things I prefer to keep private, he replied, his thumb tracing a small circle on Christine's palm that sent an unexpected shiver up her arm. Later, as a maid showed them to their suite, Christine realized they would be sharing a room. Of course they would. They were supposedly married. The door closed behind them, leaving them alone in the luxurious bedroom. You did well, Ethan said, loosening his tie. The coffee story was inspired. Thank you. Christine stood awkwardly by the bed, the only bed, reading her concern. Ethan gestured to a plush sofa near the fireplace. I'll take that. You've earned the bed. As Christine prepared for sleep, she caught herself watching Ethan's reflection in the bathroom mirror. For a man paying her to pretend, he'd been surprisingly convincing as an attentive husband. The thought troubled her more than it should have. Christine woke to the sound of distress, disoriented in the unfamiliar room. She sat up, moonlight spilling through the windows, illuminating Ethan on the sofa. He was still asleep, but his face was contorted, his body tense. Don't go. His voice raw with an emotion she'd never heard from him. Please don't leave again. She hesitated, unsure whether to wake him. Before she could decide, he jolted upright, gasping. Ethan, she called softly. He turned, momentarily unguarded in the shadowed room. I'm fine, he said automatically, but his voice betrayed him. Was it a nightmare? Just work stress. He stood abruptly, disappearing into the bathroom. Christine lay back, troubled by what she'd witnessed. Who had left him? Who could make the untouchable Ethan Reed plead in his sleep? Morning brought crisp sunshine, and the awkward dance of two strangers sharing intimate space. They dressed carefully, avoiding eye contact, maintaining the professional distance that felt increasingly artificial. Breakfast was served in a sunny room overlooking snow-covered gardens. Eleanor Reed was already seated, watching them with hawkish attention as they entered. Did you sleep well? She asked, her question pointed. Wonderfully, Christine answered, accepting coffee from a hovering server. This house has such character. Indeed. Ethan was conceived in that very suite, you know. Christine nearly choked on her coffee. Ethan's face remained impassive, but she felt his foot press against hers under the table. A silent signal of shared discomfort. Mother must you, he said coolly. Just family history, darling. Eleanor smiled thinly. Christine, tell me about your family. Ethan has been frustratingly vague. Christine felt Ethan tense beside her. Another gap in their preparation. It's just my aunt now, she said truthfully. My parents died when I was 14. Car accident. Aunt Martha raised me after that. Eleanor's expression softened fractionally. I'm sorry to hear that. And what does your aunt think of your whirlwind marriage to one of America's most eligible bachelors? She trusts my judgment, Christine replied, feeling Ethan's gaze on her. She knows I wouldn't choose someone who wasn't worth it. The lie felt strange on her tongue. Was he? After breakfast, Eleanor cornered Christine in the library, ostensibly to show her family photo albums. The real agenda became clear immediately. My son works 18-hour days, rarely takes vacations, and hasn't had a serious relationship in a decade, Eleanor said, turning pages of Ethan's childhood photos. So you'll understand my skepticism about this sudden marriage. Christine studied a photo of young Ethan, serious-faced even at 10, standing beside a piano. He still works too much, she admitted, but he's different when we're alone. Different how? Christine thought of his nightmare, his vulnerability in the dark. He carries so much responsibility, has since he was young, I imagine. But sometimes, when no one's watching, he lets the weight go. Eleanor studied her with new interest. You actually care for him. It wasn't a question, which made it harder to navigate. I wouldn't have married him otherwise, Christine said, surprised by how genuine it sounded. Later, she found Ethan in a small study, reviewing documents despite it being Christmas Eve. Your mother interrogated me, she informed him, closing the door. She excels at it. He didn't look up. Christine wandered the room, stopping at a shelf holding a single trophy. Piano competition, regional champion, she read. You play? Something flickered across his face. Used to. There wasn't time after father made me company intern at 16. You gave it up? It wasn't practical. Christine noticed sheet music buried under files. But you still play sometimes. Ethan finally looked up, his expression unreadable. How did you know that? Your hands. The way you tap your fingers when you're thinking. It's rhythmic, not nervous. She'd observed it for years, never understanding its significance until now. He stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. You notice strange things, Matthews. Christine, she corrected gently. Your wife, remember? Something shifted between them. A moment of genuine connection amid their elaborate charade. Christine, he repeated, her name sounding different in his voice. She gestured to the piano visible through the doorway. Will you play something? For your wife. The request hung between them, crossing some invisible line. To her surprise, Ethan stood and moved to the piano. His fingers hovered over the keys momentarily, before beginning a haunting melody she didn't recognize. Christine watched, transfixed by this hidden side of him, the artist buried beneath the businessman. When he finished, the silence felt charged with something neither of them had anticipated. That was beautiful, she said softly. Chopin. My mother taught me before. He didn't finish the thought. Before what? Ethan closed the piano lid. Before we became what we are now. In that moment, Christine realized she was glimpsing the real man beneath the mask, and the performance they were playing was becoming dangerously blurred. Christmas morning dawned with silent snowfall. Christine woke early, watching flakes drift past their windows, aware of Ethan still sleeping on the sofa, in repose. The hard lines of his face softened, making him look younger, unburdened. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Ethan stirred as she opened the door to find a maid with a tray of coffee. Mrs. Reed, the family will gather for gifts at 9, the woman whispered before retreating. Gifts. Christine's stomach dropped. In the whirlwind of their arrangement, she hadn't thought to bring anything for his family. Worse, she had nothing for Ethan, her supposed husband. What's wrong? Ethan asked, noting her expression as he accepted the coffee she offered. Gifts, she admitted. I didn't bring anything. It's handled. There are presents from both of us under the tree. Of course there were. Ethan Reed left nothing to chance. But I have nothing for you, she said quietly. Won't that seem strange? Something flickered across his face, uncertainty perhaps. I didn't expect. I'll figure something out, she promised, already forming a plan. The family Christmas gathering was formal. Despite the holiday, everyone dressed impeccably, mimicking a magazine spread more than a family celebration. Gifts were opened with restraint, expensive watches, jewelry, rare books, exchanged with polite appreciation rather than joy. When Eleanor handed Christine a small box, she opened it to find a delicate silver bracelet. It's lovely, thank you. It was my grandmother's, Eleanor explained. Family tradition dictates it goes to the next Reed bride. The gesture surprised Christine. A family heirloom seemed excessive for a woman Eleanor barely believed was truly her daughter-in-law. I'm honored, she said sincerely, allowing Ethan to fasten it around her wrist, his fingers lingering longer than necessary. When only one package remained under the tree, James handed it to Christine with a wink. From your husband. He actually wrapped it himself. We all witnessed the unprecedented event. The package was imperfectly wrapped, corners uneven, tape visible. Clearly not the work of a professional or staff member. Christine looked at Ethan, who watched her with unusual intensity. Inside was a leather-bound book, a first edition of The Secret Garden. How did you? She whispered, running her fingers over the embossed cover. You mentioned it once, Ethan said quietly. You said your mother read it to you before she died. 3 years ago, during a rare moment of personal conversation, she had mentioned it. She never imagined he'd been listening, much less remembering. I have something for you too, she said, reaching into her pocket for the folded paper she'd worked on at dawn. It's not much. Ethan unfolded the sheet to reveal a charcoal sketch. The ancient oak tree, visible from their bedroom window. Its branches heavy with snow, a single bird, perched against the winter sky. When did you do this? He asked, studying the drawing with genuine interest. This morning, while you were sleeping. His family watched their exchange with varying expressions, surprise, skepticism, and in William Reed's case, something like approval. "You have talent," William commented, examining the sketch over Ethan's shoulder. "She does," Ethan agreed, his eyes still on Christine. "She always has." After gifts, they bundled up for the Reed family's traditional Christmas walk through the estate grounds. Snow crunched beneath their boots as Ethan led Christine along a path winding through pine trees. "Thank you for the book," she said when they were out of earshot of the others. It was thoughtful. "Your drawing was." He paused, seeming to search for the right word. "Real. Nothing in this house is real, including us." The question slipped out before she could stop it. Ethan didn't answer immediately. "You didn't have to be kind to my mother, or patient with James's flirting, or respectful to my father. It's my job to be convincing. Is that all this is? A job?" His question hung in the cold air between them, before she could answer. Christine's foot caught on a hidden root. She stumbled, twisting her ankle as she fell. Pain shot up her leg. "Christine!" Ethan was beside her instantly, concern etched across his face. "Are you hurt?" She tried to stand but winced as weight hit her injured ankle. "I'm fine, just twisted." Without hesitation, Ethan scooped her into his arms, lifting her against his chest. "Put me down," she protested. "I can walk. Clearly you can't." His breath warmed her cheek as he carried her back toward the house, his steps sure despite the snow. Christine was acutely aware of his heartbeat against her side, the strength in his arms, the protective way he held her. This wasn't part of their performance. No one was watching. Back in their suite, he gently set her on the bed and knelt to examine her ankle. His touch was careful, clinical, yet somehow intimate. "It's not serious," he determined. "Ice and elevation should help." As he arranged pillows beneath her foot and wrapped ice in a towel, Christine watched him with new eyes. This attentive man bore little resemblance to the distant CEO who had hired her 3 years ago. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked softly. Ethan paused, still holding the ice against her ankle. "Doing what?" "Taking care of me. The book. All of it." His eyes met hers, unguarded for once. "I don't know," he admitted, the simple honesty more revealing than any explanation could have been. Something was happening between them. Something neither had anticipated, and neither could name. Something the contract explicitly forbade. The Reed family Christmas gala was an annual tradition, a glittering affair that filled the estate with Manhattan's elite. Christine stood before the mirror in their suite, hardly recognizing herself in the midnight blue gown Ethan had provided. Her hair swept up, the diamond earrings he'd insisted she wear catching the light. "You look." Ethan's voice came from behind her, trailing off as she turned to face him. He stood in the doorway in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his expression unreadable. "Convincing," she supplied, attempting to lighten the growing tension between them. "Beautiful," he corrected quietly. The word hung in the air, dangerous and thrilling. Christine busied herself with her clutch, avoiding his gaze. "Your family certainly knows how to celebrate Christmas. It's performance, like everything else." He offered his arm. "Ready, Mrs. Reed?" The grand ballroom glowed with thousands of lights. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above elegantly dressed guests, while a string quartet played softly in the corner. Christine felt eyes following them, as Ethan guided her through the crowd, his hand warm against the small of her back. "Everyone's staring," she whispered. "You're the mysterious woman who captured the uncapturable Ethan Reed," he murmured, his lips close to her ear. "Of course they're staring." Eleanor intercepted them, champagne in hand. "Darling, the Andersons are desperate to meet your bride." Her gaze swept over Christine appraisingly. "You clean up nicely, dear." "Thank you," Christine replied, recognizing the backhanded compliment for what it was. As the evening progressed, Christine found herself separated from Ethan, drawn into conversation with curious guests, eager to meet the woman who had supposedly tamed Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. She played her role flawlessly, creating a history of romantic moments that never happened, describing a relationship that didn't exist. "He proposed at sunset in Santorini," she told a captivated group of women. "Just the two of us on a private terrace, overlooking the caldera." "How did you know he was the one?" someone asked. Christine's gaze found Ethan across the room, deep in conversation with his father. He remembers the small things, she said truthfully, the details others miss. Later, as she sipped champagne near a window, Vanessa appeared beside her. "You're good," Ethan's sister said bluntly. "Almost had me convinced." Christine's pulse quickened. "Excuse me. Relax. Your secret's safe with me." Vanessa smiled thinly. "My brother hasn't looked at anyone the way he looks at you in, well, ever." She nodded toward the doorway. "Speaking of which." Christine followed her gaze to see Ethan searching the crowd, his expression clearing when he spotted her. He moved toward them with purpose. "Having fun?" he asked, reclaiming his place beside Christine. "Just girl talk." Vanessa replied with a knowing smile. She glanced upward. "Oh, look, mistletoe. How convenient." Christine followed her gaze to the sprig of green and white hanging above them. A trap cleverly laid. Tradition demands it. Vanessa announced loudly enough to draw attention from nearby guests. "Don't disappoint your audience, brother dear." Ethan's eyes met Christine's, a silent question in them. This wasn't in their contract. This crossed a line they'd been carefully avoiding. "It's just a kiss," Christine whispered, though they both knew it wasn't. Ethan's hand rose to cup her cheek, his touch feather-light. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. The moment his lips touched hers, something electric passed between them. What should have been a brief, performative kiss deepened into something else entirely. His arm circled her waist, drawing her closer. Her hands found his chest, feeling his heartbeat quicken beneath her fingers. The world around them disappeared. The onlookers, the music, the glittering lights all faded away. There was only this moment. This feeling she'd been fighting since the night he appeared at her desk. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, the look in Ethan's eyes mirrored the realization in her heart. This wasn't pretend anymore. "Convincing," Vanessa murmured as she walked away, satisfied with her mischief. They avoided each other for the next hour, moving through separate conversations, careful not to make eye contact across the room. But eventually, inevitably, Christine found herself alone in the library, staring out at the snowy gardens, trying to calm her racing thoughts. The door opened behind her. She knew without turning that it was Ethan. "We broke the rule," she said quietly, still facing the window. "I know." His voice was rough with emotion he'd never allowed himself before. "What happens now?" She turned to face him, finding him closer than she'd expected. "Now we have a choice." His eyes searched hers. "We end this tonight. You go to Seattle. We never see each other again. Or," she whispered, though she already knew, "or we give ourselves tomorrow. Just one day. No performance, no audience. Just us, whatever this is, before reality returns." It was reckless, foolish, against everything the contract specified. But as snow fell silently outside, and the distant sounds of the party filtered through the closed door, Christine made her choice. One day, she agreed, knowing it would never be enough. Boxing Day dawned bright and clear. Christine woke to find Ethan already gone from the sofa, a note on the bedside table. "Meet me downstairs when you're ready." Their borrowed day stretched before her. 24 hours to experience something real before returning to their separate lives. The thought brought both anticipation and dread. Downstairs, she found him waiting in the kitchen, more casually dressed than she'd ever seen him, in jeans and a sweater. "Good morning," he said, offering her coffee in a way that felt strangely domestic. "I thought we could avoid the family today. They're all nursing hangovers from the gala." They spent the morning walking the estate grounds, talking more openly than ever before. Christine learned about his childhood, the pressure of being the eldest Reed's son, the expectations that had shaped his life. "The company was always my future," he explained as they crossed a frozen pond. "There was never a choice." "What would you have chosen?" she asked, "if you could have anything." He considered this, as if no one had ever asked before. "Music, maybe, or architecture, something that creates, rather than acquires. It's not too late, you know." His smile held a sad wisdom. "Some paths close once you've walked too far in another direction." In the afternoon, they drove to a nearby town, anonymous in the holiday crowds. They ate lunch in a small cafe, browsed bookshops, and for a few precious hours existed as a normal couple. No contracts, no pretense. This is nice, Christine said as they walked hand in hand through a snowy park. Being normal. Is it? Ethan looked genuinely curious. I wouldn't know. She laughed, the sound bright in the winter air. Well, as a certified normal person, I can confirm this qualifies. He pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders. Thank you for today, he said quietly. For showing me what this could have been. Could have been. The words held a finality that made her heart ache. When they returned to the estate, Christine's phone rang. The screen showed her aunt's number. Martha. Is everything okay? She answered, stepping away from Ethan. Better than okay, sweetheart. Her aunt's voice bubbled with excitement. The bank called. The mortgage is paid in full, they said. There was an anonymous donation. Can you believe it? Christine's eyes found Ethan's across the room. That's wonderful news. I don't know who our guardian angel is, but I'm grateful. When are you coming home? I want to celebrate. Soon, Christine promised, her throat tight. Very soon. After hanging up, she stood in silence, reality crashing back. The purpose of their arrangement had been fulfilled. Her aunt's home was saved. There was no reason to continue this charade. Your aunt received the money, Ethan said. Not a question. Yes. Christine twisted the wedding ring she'd grown accustomed to wearing. Thank you for everything. We should leave in the morning, he said, his CEO voice returning. I'll have the driver ready at 8. Just like that. Their borrowed day was over. The walls between them, momentarily lowered, rose again with brutal efficiency. The drive back to Manhattan the next morning was silent, heavy with unspoken words. Snow had given way to cold rain, matching Christine's mood as she watched the countryside blur past. Halfway to the city, Ethan suddenly instructed the driver to pull over at a roadside rest stop. Once the car stopped, he turned to her. This isn't working, he said abruptly. What isn't? This. He gestured between them, pretending nothing's changed. Christine stared at her hands. The contract was clear. Feelings mean Seattle. I could change that. Tear up that clause. You could stay in New York. Keep your position. The offer tempted her. But Christine understood what he couldn't see. And what happens then? I watch you date other women. Arrange your meetings. Order your coffee. While pretending I never felt your lips on mine? Pain flashed across his face. I don't want you to leave. What do you want, Ethan? Really? He fell silent, unable to articulate what he needed, what they both needed. That's what I thought, she whispered, back in the city. Christine packed her desk while Ethan signed the transfer papers in his office. When he handed her the envelope with her new assignment details, their fingers brushed one last time. Your flight leaves tomorrow, he said formally. The company will cover relocation expenses. Christine slid the wedding rings across his desk. I believe these are yours. He stared at the platinum bands, something breaking behind his eyes. Christine. Goodbye, Mr. Reed, she said, summoning all her strength. Thank you for the opportunity. She walked out of his office with her head high, refusing to look back, refusing to let him see the tears that finally fell once the elevator doors closed behind her. In her empty apartment that night, surrounded by half-packed boxes, Christine allowed herself to mourn what never had a chance to exist, the truth behind a lie that had somehow become more real than anything in her life before it. 3 months passed in Seattle like a gray blur. Christine's new position came with a promotion, a corner office, and a hollow success that brought no joy. She worked efficiently, lived quietly, and tried not to think of New York or the man she'd left behind. Spring arrived, bringing rain instead of snow. Christine stared out her office window at the drizzle, reviewing quarterly reports that couldn't hold her attention. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Matthews, this came for you. Her assistant handed her a large envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, her charcoal sketch of the oak tree, the one she'd given Ethan on Christmas morning. No note, no explanation. Christine's hands trembled as she traced the lines she'd drawn months ago. Why send this now? What did it mean? Her phone rang, displaying her aunt's number. Christine. Are you sitting down? Martha sounded breathless. What's wrong? There's a man here. At the house. Christine's heart stuttered. What man? Ethan Reed. He says he needs to speak with you urgently. Something about a contract. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. He's there now. Has been for hours, sitting on the porch in the rain, refusing to leave until you call. Should I be concerned? No, Christine whispered. No, I'll call him right away. But before she could hang up, her assistant appeared in the doorway again, face flushed with excitement. Miss Matthews, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent, and Ethan appeared behind her, rain-soaked and disheveled in a way Christine had never seen him. His tailored suit was rumpled, his hair damp, his eyes wild with an emotion she couldn't name. That will be all, he told the assistant, who retreated, closing the door behind her. Christine stood frozen behind her desk. What are you doing here? I found your drawing, he said, as if that explained everything. In my briefcase. I'd forgotten it was there. So you flew across the country to return it? No. He ran a hand through his wet hair. I flew across the country because finding it made me realize what an absolute fool I've been. Christine's heart pounded painfully against her ribs. Ethan, I haven't slept in 3 months, he continued, pacing her office. I can't focus in meetings. I fired your replacement twice. The penthouse feels like a mausoleum. Do you know why? She shook her head, afraid to hope. Because you weren't there. He stopped pacing, facing her directly. Because I let the best thing that ever happened to me walk away. Because I was too afraid to admit what was happening between us. Which was what, exactly? Christine needed to hear him say it. I fell in love with you, he said simply. Not with the performance, or the pretense. With you, Christine Matthews, who notices how I tap my fingers when I think, who draws trees at dawn and sees beauty in broken things, who challenges me and understands me in ways no one ever has. The words she'd longed to hear hung in the air between them. You wrote the contract, she reminded him softly. You created the rule about feelings. Because I was terrified of exactly what happened. He moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I've spent my life avoiding emotional entanglement. Then I asked you to pretend, and the pretense became more real than anything I'd ever known. So what now? Christine asked, afraid to believe this was really happening. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out the wedding rings she'd returned 3 months ago. I'm not offering you a contract this time. No clauses, no conditions, no escape routes. He placed the rings on her desk. I'm offering you a choice, a real one. What about Seattle? My job here. Come back to New York, not as my assistant. That position no longer exists. Come back as my partner, in every sense. Or stay here, build your life without me. Whatever you choose. The rings are yours, to keep or return as you see fit. Christine stared at the platinum bands gleaming on her desk. You flew to my aunt's house first. I did. Why? Because I needed her blessing. A smile touched his lips. And because I needed to see where you came from, to understand what home meant to you. The gesture moved her more than any grand declaration could have. And did you get it? Her blessing. She made me sit in the rain for 2 hours before she'd even speak to me. Then she made me promise never to hurt you again. His expression grew serious. A promise I intend to keep. Christine stepped around her desk, closing the distance between them. No more pretending. No more pretending, he agreed. Just truth, however messy or inconvenient. She reached for his hand, twining her fingers with his. I fell in love with you too, you know. Somewhere between the contract and the mistletoe. Ethan pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. Come home, Christine. Please. Her answer was to rise on tiptoes and press her lips to his. A kiss with no audience, no performance. Just the simple truth of what they'd found in the most unlikely circumstance. 1 year later, Christine stood in their New York apartment, watching snow fall over Central Park. Christmas lights twinkled from a slightly crooked tree they decorated together. Behind her, Ethan played the piano, something he'd returned to with her encouragement. Her hand rested on the gentle swell of her stomach, their child growing beneath her heart. On her finger, the wedding ring caught the light, a symbol not of pretense, but of promise fulfilled. When Ethan's arms circled her from behind, his hands joining hers over their unborn child, Christine leaned back into his embrace. Your mother called. She's bringing your baby clothes for the nursery. Wonders never cease, he murmured against her hair. She actually approves of something I've done. She approves of us, Christine corrected, turning in his arms, of what we've built together. What they'd built was more than a marriage or a home. It was a truth that had begun as fiction, a love that had broken through every defense, every rule, every contract. It was real, messy, complicated, and more beautiful than anything either of them had dared to imagine when they signed that fateful agreement. One Christmas Eve. "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Reed," Ethan whispered, his lips finding hers in the gentle glow of their first real holiday together. This time, the title belonged to her completely, no pretense required. Script displaying script.